interested in seeing if any of that remnant from the Book of Mormon sacred teachings could find its way to where we are today. They talk about entering a time of purification. Reuniting of the race is a major concept. Healing the damage done to Mother Earth. And we will see the return of one or more great teachers who will guide us into the future. And it's not just with them. It's like everyone's waiting for that. The Jewish people are waiting for that. We're waiting for that. People all over the world are waiting for this return where we will enter into this time of purification and period of peace. And so I don't think we should be afraid of, like, we should assume that these lost tribes, wherever they are, would be waiting for the same sort of thing. And we would see echoes of that, in my opinion. In his book, The Return of the Bahana, Robert Bossiere, maybe I'll read that, discusses the widely held belief among Native peoples in the imminent return of a savior figure and claims that it in no way differs from the Christian belief in a second coming. And I apologize for my reading out loud. In the legendary history of many tribes, there is a story of a teacher similar to Jesus who taught them the spiritual mysteries and an ethical way of life. So very interesting. This guy goes and he travels for 50 years speaking with the Hopi, who is like a remnant still in Arizona. And he tells them it was a 44-year effort of them trying to be able to speak and have their prophecies foretold until 44 years later in 1992 when they're finally able to speak, address the General Assembly. They speak of their true white brother who left them in ancient times, promising to return. You see this all over the place. You see this all over the Americas, like from top to bottom, this sort of thing. But it's interesting when Chief Minigaw mentioned that he left from the Hopi area, right? Hopewell area. Black elk, this is one of the ones that he said to look into. Black elk and Crazy Horse were leaders of the Lakota Sioux in the late 1800s, a period which saw in the U.S. the decimation of many native groups. Each had a vision of the future. He told of famine and sickness. They would lose heart, and the sacred hoop of his nation would be broken. It's like everything's going to be split apart, and they just can't speak as one. And I wasn't quite sure what he meant about this, the border of Canada and U.S. really being a hindrance. But, I've been down this crazy rabbit hole where that's a hindrance and this blood quantum thing is like it's a strange thing that I want him to go further into now that I've kind of tried to get a little bit educated on the subject, but still confusing how that ramification echoes today, or how that is affected, how we're affected today, or they're affected. He saw the daybreak star rising in the east and heard a voice that said, "It shall be a relative to them, and who shall see it shall see much more. For from there comes wisdom, and those who do not see it shall be dark." Black Elk thought this meant that a great prophet from the east would bring a message to his people. Crazy Horse has a vision of darkness that descends on the people. Coming of airplanes and automobiles, we'll talk about that. And that's a big part of where they see this progression of things leading up, like 10 different things, I think, something like that. I mean, there's lots more, but there's these 10 specific things that they can see that now we've entered the next period of things. And, we think that we're at the 11th hour, it sure appears that they think we're in like the last minutes, right? Which is very interesting. Okay. He saw his people gradually awakening after the last war and beginning to dance again under the sacred tree. I think that sacred tree, correct me if I'm wrong, is when the great peacemaker came, who we would believe was probably Jesus. But maybe, if we're talking about him coming after his resurrection, or if this was a peacemaker that came in like the 900s, who knows? Could have been someone else. But they planted this sacred tree. And we know that tree imagery is very, very important within Latter-day Saint views of our Christian theology. He planted this sacred tree that they would be able to dance under again. He foresaw that the world would be made whole again. The white buffalo, this is another prophecy. I haven't really looked into it much, but it's one of their sacred symbols. I wonder if that's why sometimes we have, like, you see, like, buffalo skulls. I don't know. Maybe. Like, people use it as decoration and stuff. I don't know. In 1994, a white buffalo calf was born in Wisconsin. It's kind of like a reverse of the red heifer, but it's a white buffalo. In 1996, another was born in South Dakota. For the native peoples, these births have been a sign to mend the hoop of the nations. Like, no more division. And so much of what he's pointing towards is this reunification as being the most important element, more than just specific things that we know. And I think we would agree that really it's a way of coming together and not being so vicious. And family is such an important thing with all this too. For the native people, these births, return within the family of established brotherhood within the family of man, and return to a spiritual way of life. Tells of the peacemaker, Deganawida, something like that, right? Peacemaker foresaw the turmoil and destruction that would destroy the lives and culture of the Confederacy tribes. I think that's the Iroquois tribes. And he also saw a time beyond when there would come a great prophet who would be a world uniter. He would come in the same spirit as other prophets before him, but would renew the spirit of man in a way more worldwide and all-embracing than ever before in history. And I have to be honest, like that, I'm not sure what to make of that, because in one regard too, and like this is no disrespect, but like in one regard too, a lot of people look for this Antichrist to kind of give this false unification thing, right? So, I'm just thinking out loud, but that's one thought that came into my mind. Even though, yes, we would want this one prophet to unite people. Okay, they go through Australia and New Zealand's stuff. Something, you can read this if you want. I'll just leave it there. You can pause it. But something of note, the Waitaha nation claims the most ancient lineage in New Zealand. When the nation was broken up by warriors from the Pacific, the elders concealed 1,000 years of their generational history and wisdom teachings, passing the knowledge on only through a tiny number of people in each generation. In 1990, the elders saw in the heavens a configuration that was a sign for them to release their sacred knowledge. In 1990, a book, the Song of the Waitaha by Barry Brailsford. Might be worth seeing what's in there. And it contains these teachings. In South America, I'll leave this up as well, but I just didn't want this to go too long. Probably already going too long for some of you. Can't wait to have them back on. Mayan prophecies certainly worth looking at. This Hunbatsmen tells of an ancient confederation of Native American elders made up of representatives from Nicaragua all the way up to the Arctic Circle. And that's what he was telling me. It's like not so much that they are separate, but like this massive confederation. They have been meeting for thousands of years and continue to do so today. Why the heck have I not heard about this? Before the Spaniards came, the Confederation decided to hide the Mayan teachings, entrusting certain families with their care. They speak of Kukulkan and Quetzalcoatl, who people will sometimes think that this is Jesus, right? I think possibly this was of note that not so much in light of an expected return, but rather in terms of the possibility that each of us can attain the same exalted stage by treading the path of attaining knowledge. So that's interesting, right? The same exalted stage. What is enlightening in all of these statements is their consistent tone of reconciliation. The native groups are opening... Sorry, I'm just need to check something. All right. Where was I? The native groups are opening the doors of people of every color, speaking of themselves as rainbow warriors. Their elders have reminded them to remember the original instructions when each tribe was given by the Creator a mandate to follow. And this is so much of what he's been talking about with me over text. Is he has these maps where, you know, they're just going all over the place trying, and it seems like they're really trying to, we have the United Nations, which seems like it tries to do that, or the guise is like, that's what they're saying they're trying to do, but so much it seems like that's not what's actually happening. But that seems like there's this other effort to kind of unite not in a new world order, you would say, but just unite with a certain, with some values and principles, returning to some of those things. And we'll go into some of that. So going to Native American prophecies fulfilled, I believe this is the one I saw, this talk maybe. Anyway, we'll go through a couple things, and I think some of you will find it interesting. At the beginnings of this cycle of time long ago, the Great Spirit came down. Remember in the Book of Mormon, they talk about the Great Spirit as well, and came down, and he made an appearance and he gathered the peoples of this earth together, and he said to the human beings, I'm going to send you to 4 directions, and over time I'm going to change you to 4 colors. But I'm going to give you some teachings, and you will call these the original teachings, and when you come back together, this restoration, with each other, you will share these so that you can live and have peace on earth, and a great civilization will come about. And he said, during the cycle of time, I'm going to give each of you 2 stone tablets. And when I give you these stone tablets, don't cast them on the ground. By the way, that's a funny note, right? That should sound familiar. To the red people, he gave the guardianship of the earth, teachings of the earth, of the plants that grow from the earth, foods that you can eat, herbs for healing. To the yellow race, guardianship of the wind, which I think is so interesting, of the sky and breathing. Think of all these different Eastern sort of traditions where you find this, I don't know how to, spiritualism or whatever, but like all these breathing is such a major part of it. how to take that within ourselves for spiritual advancement. So interesting. To the west, he gave the black race of people the guardianship of the water. Learn the techniques of water, which is the chief of the elements, being the most humble and the most powerful. When I went to the University of Washington and I learned that it was a black man who discovered blood plasma, it didn't surprise me, because blood is water, and the elders already told me the black people would bring the teachings of the water. And if you have other examples of it's just so interesting to see this. He gave the white race of people the guardianship of the fire. At the center of many of the things they do, you'll find fire. The light bulb in cars with the spark, the airplanes and the trains. Fire consumes and it also moves. This is why it was the white brothers and sisters who began to move upon the face of the earth and reunite us as a family. Like, as soon as the combustion engine was it was a game changer. And, it's just, it reunite, it's just amazing. Just amazing. Of course we had wind forever. Wind power was our motion on water, but what a game changer that was. And so a long time passed, and the Great Spirit gave each of the four races stone tablets. So, where are these stone tablets today? Ours are kept at the Hopi Reservation in Arizona, and those are the ones for the red people, right? I use that with quotes because, that's, we all know that could be, anyway. At the Hopi Reservation in Arizona, I talked to people from the black race, and their stone tablets are at the foot of Mount Kenya. How have I not heard of these? The stone tablets of the yellow race of people are kept by the Tibetans in Tibet. If you went straight through the Hopi Reservation to the other side of the world, you would come out in Tibet. The Tibetan word for sun is the Hopi word for moon, and the Hopi word for sun is the Tibetan word for moon. Like this inversion. That's kind of interesting. The guardians of the traditions of the people of Europe are the Swiss. They're neutral, right? That's kind of... In Switzerland, they still have a day when each family brings out its mask. They still know the colors of the families. They still know the symbols, some of them. Each of these four people happen to be people that live in the mountains, and that's significant to us. And I want to talk to Chief Mitiga about a couple things that he mentioned regarding the mountains. Holy smokes. Let's skip down a little bit. We were given a sacred handshake to know when we came back together as brothers and sisters that we still remembered the teachings. So we knew that we were both, we remembered, we had preserved it. It was indicated on the stone tablets that the Hopis had that the first brothers and sisters that would come back to the world came as turtles across the land. And we think of the Spanish conquistadors with all their armor looking like turtles, with this shell around them. So they went out to the Spanish men. They thought, this must be them. And they extended their hand, hoping for the handshake. But into the hand, the Spanish man dropped a trinket. And so word spread throughout North America that there was going to be a hard time, like they had forgotten. That maybe some of the brothers and sisters had forgotten the sacredness of all things, and all human beings were going to suffer for this on the earth. So tribes began to send their people to the mountains. And still are. At that time, there were 100,000 cities in the Mississippi Valley alone, called the Mound Civilization. And, I have this book here, and I wonder if people know just how expansive this was. Like millions of mounds from the Hopewell era, starting around 500 BC, and being this massive trade network that kind of came under calamity and ended around 500 to or 600, estimated 500 or so AD. Like, that fits right in line. Let me see if I can give you guys a good look at this page here. Ruining everything. If I can grab me again. Sorry, guys. I'm super low tech. This. Sorry about that. This image here. All those little dots. This is the Mississippi. All those little dots. It's hard to tell, but those are all different mounds, and in some cases, collections of mounds, or even cities. Like, it's bananas. It's bananas. Let me zip myself back down. Over here. How's that? Okay. So they began to send people to the mountains when they went to do this handshake, and in comes a trinket. It's like, the mounds are still there. Sometimes they're great cities, and they're looking for this. They're waiting for this restoration of peace on earth. But if we did not do that, if we had not come together as a human family, the Great Spirit would grab the earth with his hand and shake it. And we're going to talk about these three times that the Great Spirit is going to shake the earth. The first 2 times with a single hand, but if we still don't get it, with 2 hands. And that's what they're looking forward, or not looking forward to. They're looking to kind of avoid that and warn people about that third shaking that they think is very imminent. It appears. And I guess we would think the same thing, right? And so, if you read the treaty negotiations from Red Jacket of the 6 nations on the east coast of the land, clear to Chief Joseph and Chief Seattle on the west coast of this land, they all said the same thing. Chief Joseph said, "I accord you the right, and I hope you accord me the right to live in this land. Always we are trying to live together, but instead of living together, you all know there was separation, there was segregation. They separated races, they separated Indians, they separated the blacks. In the state of Washington, it was against the law for an Asian to marry a white woman." Like, all this different segregation. Until quite recently. They talk about this black ribbon. And upon it, it would have things that move like bugs. And they would know when they see that they're going to be running into this first shaking. And so these bugs would leave trails of dirt, and when it would shake, the bugs would be sent into the air, and then there would be trails of dirt in the air as well. And they kind of see the bugs as being the cars along these roads, and the first shaking being the First World War. And after that, we have the airplanes that really kind of become more, come into more wide usage, as says there. And the bugs would move into the sky. So they saw these 2 things. They saw these, and then they began to hear that there was going to be a League of Nations in San Francisco. So the elders gathered in Arizona around 1920. So and they wrote a letter to Woodrow Wilson, and this is interesting. They asked if the Indian people could be included in the League of Nations. At that time, the United States, and I think this is why he's so frustrated, meaning Chief Mitiga, and really what he's trying to get. Like, it seems like they just want a seat at the table to be able to speak. Because they do have, that I think that's what's so frustrating to them. That there's been so much squelched, and now just having that opportunity. At that time, the United States Supreme Court had held that a reservation is a separate and semi-sovereign nation, not a part of the United States, but protected by it. This became a concern because people didn't want the reservations to become more and more separate. They didn't want them to be considered nations. It's like, oh, these are just tribal, savage people, right? These, like, they aren't civilized. They don't have rules of law and things, and so, you know, we'll protect them. But like, I think, you know, we just see some of, like, it's so interesting to look at some of this, because I am grateful that I live where I live, but, you know, you do look at some of the stuff that happened, and it's like, holy smokes. And we up in Canada for Saturday morning cartoons, we would get these commercials that talk about some of this stuff, and it's interesting to see how some of that will ripple today, and they just, you know, I want to ask him more about that so he speaks for himself and I don't make any weird assumptions. So they didn't want them to be considered in this League of Nations as a voice. They did not write back, and the native peoples were left out of the League of Nations. So that circle was incomplete. Remember the ring that would break, and they want to reconnect it. In the League of Nations circle, there was a southern door, the yellow people. There was a western door, the black people, and the northern door, the white people. But the eastern door was not attended. Like, it wasn't a full council. It wasn't complete. The elders knew that peace would not come on the earth until the circle of humanity is complete, until all the four colors sat in the circle and shared their teachings. Then peace would come on the earth. Isn't it interesting to see this perspective of what they're looking for, and how it kind of echoes some of what we're looking for? So they knew things would happen, and that things would speed up a little bit. And if you look at the rate of technological increase, even from the time, you know, from the 1850s, it just is going like crazy. And even in the last 10 years, think of how much things have changed. There would be a cobweb built around the earth that they would and people would talk into this cobweb. That's why I want some of these things, like, I want to know where these came from. Anyway, they would speak of that as the telephone. A sign of life would appear in the east, and it would tilt and bring death. Remember the swastika is like an is it an inversion, and the other way is peace, but it is being used for, you know, it's a counterfeit version of it being used for like the worst thing. It would come with the sun, which is like coming with the rising of the Japanese Empire is the way they would see it. Great death. And now the Great Spirit will grab the earth again in his hand and shake it. And this shaking will be worse than the second one, in the Second World War. So the sign of life reversed and tilted, we call that the swastika, and the rising sun in the east was the rising sun of Japan. These two symbols are carved in stone in Arizona. It's like, someone's got to show me that. When the elders saw these two flags, these were the signs that the earth was to be shaken again. It's like bananas, right? If that's true, like, I just want to know more about this. The worst misuse of the guardianship of the fire is called the gourd of ashes. It's the atomic bomb. They said the gourd of ashes will fall from the air. It will make the people like blades of grass in the prairie fire, and things will not grow for many seasons. I saw it on television not long ago, and they were talking about the atomic bomb, the gourd of ashes. They said it was the best kept secret in the history of the United States. The elders wanted to speak about it in 1920. That's why I want these things verified, because if that's true, that's wild. They would have spoken of it and foretold its coming if they could have entered into the League of Nations. The elders tried to contact President Roosevelt and ask him not to use the gourd of ashes, because it would have a great effect on the earth and eventually cause even greater destruction and a third shaking of the earth with two hands, right? Third World War. Part of the things that want to talk to Chief Midiga about, obviously, what they view is coming. So, and as I say that, I want to see what their view is, but again, it's a very interesting position he is in as a member of the church who sustains the prophet, but also takes these things very seriously, and in this position that he's been placed in. So they knew after the second shaking of the earth, when they saw the gourd of ashes fall from the sky, then there would be an attempt to make peace on the other side of this land. And because the peace attempt of the west coast had failed, they would build a special house on the east coast of this Turtle Island. And I think Turtle Island is North America? On the east coast. And all the nations and peoples of the earth would come to the house, and it would be called the house of Micah? And it would shine like the mica on the desert shines. So the elders began to see they were building the United Nations made out of glass that reflects like the mica on the desert. So they knew this was the house of Micah, and all the peoples of the earth should go to it. So they met and talked about this. They said that in the 1920s they had written, and they had not been responded to. So they said this time we better go to the front door of the house, because things might get a lot worse. They go and they say, we represent the indigenous peoples of North America, and we want to address the nations of the earth. We're going to give you 4 days to consider whether or not we should be allowed to speak. They were treated to one of the Six Nations reserves in New York State. The Six Nations reserves are keepers of the great law of peace of the prophet that appeared here in North America, Decanwida. And this law of peace is still recited. It takes 4 days between sunrise and sun moon each year. An Indian by memory must recite this time of year. So it's so, and these people have been accepted by these Jewish sages, which is so interesting how you see these links. 4 days later, they came back, and I believe the nations of the earth heard that the Indians had come to the door, and they voted to let the Indians in. They wanted to hear what they had to say. But the United States is one of 5 nations of the United Nations with a veto power. And still they were concerned, because this time the native sovereignty was even stronger, and I believe they vetoed the entrance of the native people. And it's got to be that what Chief Midiga is speaking towards, right? A lot of this is the frustration towards that sort of thing. And so I am very curious about when they get together what they're going to have to say. So then they knew other things would happen on the earth, and the United Nations would not bring peace on earth, but there would be continuing and deepening confusion. You can go through some of this stuff. Some more of the prophecies they're looking into. You're going to see a time in your lifetime when human beings are going to find the blueprint that makes us. They call that now DNA. They are going to cut this blueprint. They call that genetic splicing. They're going to make new animals upon the earth. And think of Noah. It seems like that was a major part of really caused that first, that the great flood was because of this sort of thing. They're potentially. And they're going to think these are going to help us. You will see new animals, and even the old animals will come back. Animals that people thought had disappeared. They will find them here and there. They're going to reappear. Some Jurassic Park kind of stuff. And we're almost done here, I think. At least half of it. And we can go again on another day, but there was a nice place to stop. They said, and I know many of you are from tribes that also have this prophecy, you're going to see a time when the eagle will fly its highest in the night and it will land upon the moon. And at that time, many of the native people will be sleeping, which symbolically means they have lost their teachings. We're at that time now. The eagle has landed on the moon in 1969. When the spaceship landed, they sent back the message, the eagle has landed. Like, isn't that, like, of all the things to say, I mean, of course, the eagle is national animal of the U.S., but still wild. When they heard these first words, the eagle has landed, they knew that was the start of a new time and a new power for Native people. You can go back to some of this. It talks about the U.S. dollar and how the olive branch represents like healing to some, but to them like the enslavement of black people, and then like the arrows is like kind of a holding on to the native peoples, something like that. And then in the commemorative coin after they landed, the eagle still has the olive branch, but not the arrows. And obviously an olive branch, maybe to us might mean a little something different, something very different. So he said at this time, you're going to see that things will continue to speed up, that people on the earth will move faster and faster. Grandchildren will not have time for grandparents. Parents will not have time for children. It will seem like time is going faster and faster. Isn't that the truth, right? The Great Spirit has been shaking the earth 2 times, the First and Second World Wars, to remind us that we are a human family, to remind us that we should have greeted each other as brothers and sisters. The third shaking, and we can go more into this, but it's a little bit spooky. Not this first part that I've highlighted, though. Tonight they were talking on the news about the sign of the third shaking of the earth. When they said they're going to see it after there's a house in the sky built. You can think of this maybe as the space station, that people go and live in it. When you see people living in the sky on a permanent basis, you will know the Great Spirit is about to grab the earth. This time not with one hand, but with both hands. The spirits will warn you twice, but the third time you stand alone. Talk about these Baha'i writings. Baha'i writings. So they ask, isn't there anything we can do? And they said, well, it's just that way that if a person does not have the spiritual eyes to see, it's very hard to show them. Or if they don't have the ears to hear, it's very hard to speak with them. We wish that we could go get them all, but we can't. It's just that some are not going to wake up. But some will wake up. I guess you could say it that way. And so they say there's going to be a third shaking of the earth. It's not going to be a good thing to see, but we will survive it. We will survive it. And when we survive it, there's going to be another attempt to make a circle of the human beings on the earth. And this time, the native people will not have to petition to join, but will be invited to enter the circle because they say the attitude towards us will have changed by then. change it? Could we stop it? The answer is yes. The prophecies are always either or. We could have come together way back there in 1565, and we could have had a great civilization, but we didn't. Always along the path of these prophecies, we could have come together. We still could. And I want to end with this note. The Hopis in their prophecies say that there will be a religion that comes here. Maybe it will be true and bring unity, or maybe it will not be true and not bring unity. If it does not bring unity, a second religion will come. And the people of this religion are known in the Hopi language as the Bahani, the people of Baha. So you can think of, like, people would see that first religion as being Christianity. And, hold on one second, getting a message here from my spouse. Okay, sorry. Yeah, like the first one maybe being the people carrying the book. And while we feel that they had true things in the book, that there were untrue things in the practices of what they were preaching. And like I believe that the Constitution of the United States, even though I'm from Canada, is an inspired thing. But we know that, and that there are inspired people towards doing that, but that there is still a ways to go in actually practicing those things. But let's keep going. So they're waiting for this second religion to come. And the people of this religion are, in the Hopi language, the people of Baha. Yeah, Ni, in Baha Ni, people of means Ni. So I was looking for the people of Baha. I wondered who the people of Baha were. I was a Baha'i for quite a while before somebody told me that Baha'i means people of Baha. I thought, oh my goodness, here I was looking for it all these years and I never even noticed it. I had already found it. I was stubborn and didn't want to become a Baha'i, but my grandfather had passed away. I'll let you read this, but Baha'i, it means light or glory. Baha'i means follower of the light. And like Joseph said, I saw a pillar of light. Of all the things that you could talk about or describe the restoration as, it is this restoration of light. And like the Savior is described as light, and we are to put on the armor of light. Not like turtles, but a different kind of armor. Well, armor of iron. So I thought that was very, very, very interesting. That's who they would be looking for. And I don't know if that's that hummingbird that they're looking for, between the eagle up here and the condor down here and the hummingbird in the middle to really unify everything. But isn't that interesting that they are waiting for the people of light? And within the church we talk about being a Zion people and what that would mean if we could share that in a way that was significant and powerful. So, very interesting. I have so many questions, and I've been trying not to bug him, but he's been responding, which has been nice. But we will come talk again sometime. A lot of your questions have been noted, and I'll try to not let him